welcome to the regular council meeting for the City of St. Peter. It is Monday, July 25th, 2022. It's 7 p.m. This meeting is now called to order. Would all rise for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up tonight, approval of the agenda. We all have copies of the agenda before us. Are there any corrections or revisions to the agenda as distributed? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of the agenda as distributed signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Next up, approval of the minutes. The minutes are printed in our packet, pages 6 through 8. Are there any corrections or revisions to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Next up, we have a public hearing on rezoning. There's a request to rezone the properties at 111, 119, and 125 North Minnesota Avenue. A public hearing has been scheduled at this time to receive comment on a proposed rezoning of these properties at North Minnesota Avenue from Central Business District to residential and professional services. Notice of the public hearing has been duly published in the St. Peter Herald as required under state law, and property owners which within 350 feet of the subject properties have been notified of the hearing. Action to consider the proposed rezoning is scheduled under new business. Let's see. The rules for public hearings are printed on page 9 of the packet. First up, staff presentation. Oh, yes, we're going to open the public hearing. It is 7:02 p.m.
Mayor and members, the information is included on page 32 in your packet, and as the mayor outlined, appropriate notice has been provided, both published and to the property owners within 350 feet. This petition comes from the owners of 111, 119, and 125 North Minnesota Avenue. If you've looked at the property, if you've driven by the property, the example that I used at planning and zoning I think is very appropriate. It kind of looks like a duck, talks like a duck, walks like a duck. Previously, this had been zoned commercial business district, which would restrict the utilization related to single-family use. A couple of the properties, in fact, one appears to have been sold already for single-family use. I'm not sure how that worked through a title exchange, because normally the zoning is looked at. That's not something that we control. It's not something that we're involved in unless a request is provided for by a title company or a transaction attorney. But in consultation with city staff, looking to solve some of the challenges that are in this area, where the history has been both residential and utilization that meets the RP1 district requirements. To be clear, the current central business district does not allow for single-family residential. It does allow for multifamily. The conversion to RP1 specifically in this instance would allow for lots of things, but it would also allow these properties to be used as a single family in the event utilization wants to occur in that method. So this in some ways broadens the opportunity for utilization of these properties, which clearly are not designed for a retail commercial type use. This is an issue that has been reviewed by planning and zoning, and the process is that they review and they make a recommendation to the city council, who holds the hearing and ultimately has the decision opportunity as to whether to rezone or not. Again, as the mayor indicated, the decision on that is slated on the agenda for later under new business. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and certainly this is an opportunity for folks from the public to comment whether they receive notice or not. The idea is for public input during these hearings.
All righty. Any questions for Todd? I don't see. Oh, Daryl.
Is there other RP1 zoning within that area, or would this be just a spot zone of RP1?
This would not be a spot zone of RP1. If I can direct you to the overhead or on page 34 of your packet, the area directly north of that is RP1. The area directly west of that is RP1. The area directly northwest, so across kitty corner, across the intersection is RP1. The area to the east, to the riverside, is actually industrially zoned. And so this would not be a spot zone. The alley, I think a number of things lend well to its opportunity to be rezoned. And at least from my perspective, it's a pretty good way to provide for the utilization that the property owners are looking at without impairing the city's opportunity to control land use and utilization of the properties.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see the applicants here and no members of the public. Oh, we do have a member of the public here.
I own 111.
All right, would you like to address the council?
Honestly, I just came to see what happens and see. I mean,
That's okay.
Yeah,
That's
you-
okay.
Sure what I'll do myself.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, you are off the hook. You do not have to address us, but thanks for being here. We always appreciate having members of the public come. So, hearing no further comment, we're going to go ahead and close the hearing. It is 7:06. All right, next up on our agenda, we have visitors' comments. Are there any members of the audience who'd like to speak to the council on any agenda item? Hearing none. General visitor comments. Is there anybody who'd like to address the council on any matter whatsoever? Hearing none. We will move on to approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins on page 11 of the packet and concludes with a resolution on page 31. The resolution includes approval of the following consent agenda items. Budgeted purchases in excess of $10,000 are hereby approved. Payment to Cargill for 250 tons of road salt at $90.97 per ton. The following employee appointment is approved at the wage indicated. That's Joshua Clacius as patrol sergeant. The following license applications are approved upon contingent upon payment of the licensing fee in compliance with city code regulations. A temporary soft drink license to the Church of St. Peter. Temporary on-sale liquor to Church of St. Peter for two different events. And to St. Peter Chamber of Commerce. A temporary gambling license, 3 of them, all to the Church of St. Peter for events on 3 different dates, as well as the schedule of disbursements for July 6th through July 20th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda, Brad?
Just a question for the chief. So with this appointment, are we going to be having another opening once the patrol sergeant retires?
Thank you, Councilmember DeVos. Yes, we currently have an opening right now to
Okay.
fill the retirement that we recently had with Sergeant Higgins. So there is an advertisement out as of last week. We currently have another applicant that's in a background investigation now, but yes, in regards to your question, we do have a current opening or an officer within the police department.
Okay, thank you.
I also have a question for you, Chief. How many open positions are there then at this time?
At this particular time, including the person that's currently in a background investigation, we have 2 openings.
Okay.
We have 2 openings.
And have there been recent conversations with the school district about their needs for school resource officers, and how does that relate to sort of our hiring position at this point? Are they still expecting 2? Will they have 1?
According to the 1 year that we have remaining on our contract, they are expecting 2. City Administrator Prafke and I have both been in contact with Mr. Gronseth regarding our staffing shortages, which is going to affect that second school resource officer going there. But we have every intention and plan to have 1 at the start of the school year with the hope of perhaps getting the second one started when we are to full staff.
Thank you.
So just as a clarification, for full staff, we mean through training.
Mhm.
So they're completed with their field training, brings us to full staff.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions about the consent agenda, Emily?
Yeah, for Chief, it mentioned here that there was an internal hiring process. How many candidates did you have for this position?
Initially, we had two, and just the day before the interview process with the panel that I had in place, that reduced to one candidate. Both would have been great patrol sergeants. I'm thankful for that opportunity to have two qualified candidates, but in the end, we just had one that interviewed.
Thank you.
I don't hear any further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The consent agenda, again, the resolution is on page 31. We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Bettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Graham,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenthal,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Melham,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We have no unfinished business before us today, so we will move on to new business. The first item is adoption of an ordinance rezoning certain properties from Central Business District CBD to residential and professional services RP1. And we just discussed this, but we can jump in again.
Mayor and members, if you have any additional questions, I'd be happy to try and answer those as best I can. I think the report that we provided just a few minutes ago covered the bases. The mayor also indicated this is not just a resolution, this is an ordinance change, and that's customary underneath the rules that you have, as zoning districts are established by ordinance. And so, again, that information starts on page 32 with the ordinance on page 35, I believe.
I was just gonna say, I think this rezoning request actually is a good indication of just how much we do need to work on housing in the community because of the fact that, people are looking to take any space they can and convert it into housing. I'm in favor of it, but I do think it's just another indication of how much we need to work on housing.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, the resolution before us is on pages 35 and 36 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Having a motion and second, will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Graham,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenthal,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Melham,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Bettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, adoption of a resolution authorizing adoption of a resolution accepting terms and conditions of grant agreement with Minnesota Department of Transportation for Local Road Improvement Program grant funds, and that is what you're here to talk to us about, Pete, I'm guessing?
Madam Mayor and City Council, if you recall, at our last council meeting, we pulled part of the resolution authorizing acceptance of the grant. We do have everything solidified in the resolution as per the agreement. The funding hasn't changed, so we still have that package under the fiscal impact. And really what we're asking you guys to do today is to authorize the mayor and city administrator to move forward with the grant acceptance. And we will begin the project and get things going.
Anything to add, Todd?
No, without these funds, you don't have enough money. So this is an important grant to enter into.
Any questions, Emily?
I'm just curious, exactly when do you plan on starting?
We hope within the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
Yep, contractor's ready to go, getting a few things together before we start. So it doesn't do us any good to shut the road down now and tear it apart and not have the materials. So we're getting a few materials delivered and we'll be ready to roll.
Great, thank you.
Dustin?
When is the completion date expected to be?
We still hope by the end of October,
So
we're done in that time frame. So
Okay.
usually about 90, 95 days, somewhere in that neighborhood. We anticipate the road will be open this winter. May not have everything seeded, but it'll be stabilized.
Other questions? Hearing none, the resolution before us on page 39 of the packet, accepting terms of grant agreement to State Transportation Fund Local Road Improvement Program Grant Terms and Conditions, SAP 165-106-006, and Tide SAP 52-605-063 Broadway Avenue Sunrise Drive intersection project. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please. resolution is approved. Next up, adoption of a resolution authorizing dedication of land for Broadway Avenue, Sunrise Drive Roundabout right-of-way. Pete.
Madam Mayor and City Council, as you guys are aware, we have been working with a couple of property owners along the new roundabout on Broadway and Sunrise, and we do need a couple of little parcels from each of those two areas. One is the Catholic Cemetery belonging to the Church of St. Peter, and the other is where the fire hall is going, which is the ownership of the City of St. Peter. A couple of noted corrections here is in the memo, it should say .04 acres, which is correct for the fire hall property. Under the the Calvary Cemetery, it is .055, and that should reflect also into the resolution, those numbers as being correct. We did come to an agreement, as you can see, for the Calvary Cemetery in the amount of $546.94. That's roughly $10,000 an acre. We do have to move the sign, so they were very easy to work with. Discussed the project. Amy Cam, our stormwater foreman, went out and did a lot of that work and worked with the Calvary Cemetery on that point. And then, of course, we had to bend Todd's arm a little bit to get that acreage from the fire hall. So not too bad of a deal for the City of St. Peter here as we move forward. And with your approval of the resolution on page 42, we will obtain those properties, and we will dedicate those to right-of-way. So they will not be city property, they will be purchased and dedicated to right-of-way, meaning other people can use those as far as utilities and public sidewalks and different areas along there. I'm available for questions, but we're requesting that you approve the resolution on page 42.
Thanks very much. Questions for Pete? Anything to add, Todd?
No.
All right. The resolution before us, on page 42, has that one correction Pete mentioned, authorizing land dedication for right-of-way needed for the Broadway Avenue and Sunrise Drive intersection improvements. Is there a motion to approve the corrected resolution?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ram,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, adoption of a resolution creating a part-time mechanic assistant position. Pete.
Madam Mayor and City Council, as we talked at workshop, we're interested in adding a mechanic assistant to our workforce. We're asking that you increase our full-time equivalencies at Public Works so that we can properly maintain not only our transit, but Public Works and other vehicles that come under the city's fleet. In the past, what we have done is we had hired a seasonal employee to come in and work. That worked really well for about 2 to 3 years, and accomplished a lot of work, very efficient in the work that was completed, saved the city a ton of money. Since that time, we've had a harder time filling that. We did have one younger person come in who was going to school to get their feet wet. They have since gone to school, and we weren't able to fill that this year because of nobody was interested in working that way. We do have the work out there. We need to have some additional support for our full-time mechanic. There's a ton of equipment that goes through that maintenance facility out there, and so our request is to allow us to go out and hire somebody to fill that support role. The job description is on page 45 and runs until page 48, and the resolution is on page 49. My request tonight is that you approve the job description and allow us to fill that position and approve the resolution on page 49.
Thank you very much, Pete. Any questions? Carrie?
So it details this in the memo, but although we're increasing the full-time equivalents, there is a funding plan for this position, adding this position.
Right.
Todd or Pete, would you like to talk about that?
So Pete, would you please?
Sure, yeah, we have some general fund money. You know, of course, when we've added transit, there is some funding to maintain the vehicles there. And we are compensated for any repairs that we do on that line. But that's what's really has taken a lot of our mechanics' time, and the other equipment is where it suffered. So it would be a general fund funding mechanism that we would use. That's where a majority of our maintenance is coming from right now, and so that's where we plan to go.
So ultimately, the funding source is from those dollars that we've already had for the temporary,
Yep.
augmented by the MRBT dollars.
Yep.
Right. And at the workshop, Pete, you had talked about sort of in the past, the city council has approved newer purchases of vehicles and equipment, and that's also allowed, taken some pressure off of the mechanics as well.
That it has, yes. If we hadn't had that opportunity, we would probably be asking for full-time positions, so we're fortunate right now.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Hearing none, the resolution before us on page 49 of the packet calls for modifying the Public Works Department staffing level to include a part-time mechanic assistant position, adoption of pay equity points, and adoption of a position description. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeBosse?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Ram?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston?
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenthal?
Aye.
The resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Next up, adoption of a resolution authorizing city assistance for a Day of Hope event.
Mayor, members, the information is contained on page 50 within your packet. This is the second opportunity for you to review, or really a second year for this event. They're looking to hold the event from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. on August 27th. They'd like to utilize certainly the restrooms in Minnesota Square Park, have key utilization of supplies, use of city electricity, and they would provide music in the park from approximately 1 o'clock till 5 o'clock and utilize the stage that gets set up as a part of the pavilion. For that, they have to meet the community festival kind of rules that we have in place, which is the responsibility to maintain the appropriate number of porta potties if necessary, hand washing stations. Certainly the insurance is a major component for us. We really always request that at least one of the porta potties be ADA accessible, and they would have to secure a show license. This is a little bit different than they had last time, but they'd have to secure a show license for this event. The resolution, well, the request that you see is on page 52, but the resolution for this is on page 53. Happy to try and answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for Todd? Carrie?
I don't have questions, but I just have a comment. So this event and the event that we had over the weekend, Minnesota Music Fest, Rock Bend, all of these events that are using the new pavilion, it's really wonderful to see. I know that events have increased, like Day of Hope. They started their event after the new pavilion was constructed. It was a big investment for our community, but we're really seeing the payoff with the utilization of the pavilion and the amount of people that come to town, stopping in the different businesses. And so it's really great to see this event be successful for a second year and to see additional events and organizations using that pavilion along with families in the community and folks that just want to use the pavilion for a lunch spot or a picnic. If you go by Minnesota Square Park, there's always people there. And so I think the investments that we're working on in the park and making that area accessible, it's really great to see. And so once it's all done, we're gonna have just a premier park more than it's ever been. So I'm really pleased to see this event and other events utilizing the pavilion.
Thanks, Carrie.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Brad?
I'm just wondering, if we don't approve this event, would the day then be considered hopeless?
I don't know that we've classified it that way, but I think if you continue with the dad jokes, we might have to throw you off the council for a few minutes.
Penalty box? Yeah, that right over there.
Turn this microphone off.
Tony's got the control over there.
Shut his microphone off.
Emily?
I can't follow that. Todd, could you talk just a little bit about like how a group like this, like I know they have to provide insurance and we provide a cost or a level of employee and assistance and that kind of thing. What do they monetarily pay for an event like this to participate or to hold the event in the park?
So every event is just a little bit different, and you have some long-standing events that go on. And so this is a great compare and contrast to the next item on your agenda. But as an example here, they would have paid to reserve the park, and we would request that they pay for the stage based on your fee structure. And I don't mean pay for the stage, I mean pay for the setup and the takedown of the stage. The rest of the activities that you see in here are done as a part of you approving this. If you didn't approve this, they would not have this level of support. So they wouldn't have access to the supplies for the restrooms and those type of activities. And we wouldn't give them full utilization, or what we might consider fuller utilization of the park overall.
Great, thanks. I just think it's important for people to understand just like that there is a cost to this and that we
Mhm.
treat all these organizations in a similar way when we consider
Yeah,
usage. in
to be
these parks.
clear, we do have a couple of activities that go on, and to compare and contrast to the next item.
Right.
So as an example, Rock Bend Folk Festival, we do not have them pay. They've asked in previous years not to pay for reservation of the park, or for the establishment of the stage. So in that instance, they have not, but most other groups do. I don't know that there's a bright, bold, clear line. It's just been something that's been traditionally or historically provided to those well-established festivals, community festivals and events at Minnesota Square.
Thank you.
Carrie?
I have one more comment as a follow-up. So, Shannon and I serve as liaisons on the Tourism Bureau, and so a lot of times we'll see these events request grants for advertising and promotion, before they, or maybe before or during, in conjunction with requesting city assistance. So that's another great thing about these events and using the pavilion, because they're getting, or requesting grant dollars for advertising and promotion, which the idea is that it brings more people to town utilizing the businesses, staying in the hotels, motels, and that sort of thing. So there's, seems to be multiple opportunities for them to access some funding.
Great.
Yeah, I also wanted to just add regarding use of the pavilion, what a beautiful and flexible space it is. This summer, I can think of at least two events that had to be canceled if we hadn't had the pavilion space that they could move into. I'm thinking of the Memorial Day event. We had a rainy morning there. We had a rainy day this Saturday as well, but we were able to sort of work things into the pavilion space, and so it's really a wonderful, wonderful place for our community.
Mayor, members, the resolution is on page 53.
The resolution authorizing city assistance for a Day of Hope event. Is there a motion to approve?
So,
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Rivas.
aye.
Councilmember Ram,
Aye.
Councilmember Schuerstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBonis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Our last item of new business is the adoption of a resolution authorizing city assistance for Rock Bend Folk Festival.
Members, as you can see from the packet and from your calendars, we're rolling up close to the time, or the usual time, for Rock Bend Folk Festival. They're looking to provide for events on September 10th and 11th. Their utilization of the park is a couple days more than that for setup and takedown, and so that's how we get to the overall dates. This has been a tradition in St. Peter for more than a quarter of a century, and you can see within the packet, starting on page 54 onto page 55, really the criteria that is utilized for them related to Minnesota Square Park. And then, as a part of the resolution, you can see they're required to have insurance. We provide for them setup of the pavilion. They utilize the space just really well. We require them to have the appropriate number of porta potties and hand washing stations, including ADA accessible porta potties. There are sometimes modifications to parking in the area with additional handicap parking. That'll be a little bit different this year with the advent of the new parking area that is just south of the pavilion. So they'll utilize that a little bit differently. And certainly they provide for the registration of their vendors and ensure that licensing is incorporated into that overall. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might not have, and if I didn't mention insurance, I think that's very important. We require them to have the appropriate level of insurance to help indemnify the city in case there was an accident at that location. Their request is on page 56, and the resolution starts on page 59. Again, happy to answer any questions that you might have as best I can.
Questions for Todd? Carrie and then Brad.
Maybe you should have gone with Brad first. Todd, I noticed on page 58, it says, if you or any member of the council or the St. Peter Chamber would like to introduce any act or promote St. Peter in person from stage, let us know. That's their Rec Ben's invitation to us. Are you going to introduce a band?
I
or
typically have
act?
not, but throughout the years, council members and others have participated in that. It doesn't have to be, it's great if you call in advance and visit with John or one of the other organizers. However, it can kind of be done pretty quick on the spot too, if you're down there, if you just happen to be down there. So certainly keep this number handy and seek them out. They're always happy to have someone come. The last one that I'm aware of, where an elected official did that was right after, was their first utilization of the pavilion. And so there were applause for the elected official at that time because the pavilion has been utilized very well by them. And as you know, they had a seat, one of the 33 seats at the table for the pavilion task force. And so they're continue to be excited about its utilization. So I appreciate that. But typically, no, I think that's an elected official deal. I
encourage
appreciate
you
the
all,
offer, though.
my fellow members, to introduce a band or two.
You go first.
All right, Brad.
You know, it was on Carrie's comment about the pavilion and how much of an asset it is. The improvements I've seen on the plaza, particularly the stations for the food trucks, I noticed it both at 4th of July and then also this weekend. I think they're set up nicely. You've got them in one place, but also they're not damaging the grass. And I think it's a nice place for people to go. We've got all the utilities set up for them. So I think once again, it's, as Carrie was saying, the improvements that we're putting into Minnesota Square Park are really paying off.
Thanks.
It's fun to see people figure out how they are going to utilize it for their activity. And it takes a little experimentation, and so it's kind of fun to see them experiment and really grab onto the facilities that you provide there.
Any other questions or comments? The resolution before us is on page 59 of the packet, authorizing city assistance for Rock Bend Folk Festival. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson,
Hi.
Councilmember Bettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ray,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Nolan.
Aye. The resolution is approved. Next up, reports. The only thing I would like to report on is the groundbreaking for the fire hall. That was July 18th, I believe. It was great to see so many people out there, all of our council members, our state representative and senator, and it was a great day and a really exciting time in the life of St. Peter. We don't build a fire hall except for maybe one every 100 years or so, and so it was remarkable, and would just like to extend my thanks to previous council members who put in a lot of work toward this project because it's been a long time in the making. So that's all I wanted to say. Todd, how about you?
Mayor, members, if I could, I'm going to ask Pete to come up. As you know, one of the things that we've worked on for a while, and certainly with the park board, has been development of some pollinator plants, and we've got some materials from Simpla. And so, Pete, we have a map. For whatever reason, Pete, I'm just not figuring it out here. I can't show the entire map all at one time here, but I can scroll up and down. So maybe you'd like to talk about this. We just wanted to give you an update because we know this type of activity continues to be important in your thought process.
You bet. Throughout the year, our park staff and superintendent have been looking at different areas that we can install some pollinators and some native plants in some of our parks and park areas, and we got 4 areas now that we're going to be working on in the next few weeks here. Community Spirit Park, as you guys are aware, there's a large circular area which will have a future restroom in the future, shelter up in the what I would call the eastern central part of the park. On the trail system, and we're going to plant some of that area with native plants and some pollinators. As Todd had mentioned, we are the recipient of several trays of seedlings that have grown into nice little plants, and we're gonna have our gardener put those in and get some things started. You probably won't see as much this year as you will in the future, but once we go through a winter cycle and they come back next year, you'll see some more beauty in that park area. Some of the other areas are Johnson Park at the intersection of Broadway and Washington Avenue there, along the Broadway section, just going to the west a little bit in Johnson Park, across from the apartment complexes there. The Mill Pond, we're going to be doing something in the area of the older shelter along the south side of the park. We'll be adding some flowers through there and some plants. And then at Jefferson Park, by the what I'd call the flagpole area out there, there's a nice little triangular space on the sidewalks. And we're going to dig that up and get some native plants and planting in there. And hopefully we'll add a little more color to what we have going on. And hopefully each year we can add a little more and keep this thing rolling. So it does beautify the parks to a large degree.
Mayor and members, that's the last report that I have for you for this evening. But I do have a request for a closed session under Minnesota statute related to a potential real estate transaction.
Carrie?
I just have a quick question. Todd, would you be able to share that map with us on the council?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, if there's no one else who'd like to report on anything else, we have the request for an executive session. So the resolution calling for adoption of a closed session is on page 61 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp?
Aye.
Councilmember Sherstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Rutherford?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
The resolution is approved, so we will be coming back into open session only to adjourn the meeting. And
That's
so
correct.
we're gonna move down to the Traverse de Sioux building, room, and it is 7:37 right now.
All right.
I can keep this, Pete?
What's your favorite plant?